Since the return of democracy to Nigeria over 16 years ago, it is a statement of fact that the seamless transition from one administration to the other is worthy of reflection. Between Olusegun Obasanjo, late Umaru Musa Yar'Adua to Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, Nigeria witnessed reforms across the sectors including bilateral and transcontinental relations. In summary, the foreign policy posture of Nigeria took a new turn under successive regimes. Under Yar'Adua, for instance, it was shaped with a 7-point agenda. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan called it a transformation agenda, and now, Nigeria under Muhammadu Buhari, it is the change agenda. Under the change agenda, a lot say change matter. What is the posture of Nigeria's foreign policy? Within the period under review, a number of bilateral agreements and MOUs have been signed, and Nigeria's position globally on security, corruption, and the economy has taken a completely new dimension. Nigeria's foreign policy and sundry matters is our focus on this edition of Diplomatic Ties, which is in 2 parts. This is part 1. My guest is the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Geoffrey Onyama. Welcome to Diplomatic Ties.
Thank you very much.
My name is Omini Udon. Stay on for the program, which promises to be very interesting just after this time out. Under the change agenda, we are hitting beyond 1 year, heading towards 2 years. What would you say, since you came on board, comparatively, where we are coming from, where you are, is the foreign policy position of Nigeria within the ambits of corruption, economy, and security?
From where we're coming from, there's been a major change. If we look at security, the foreign policy drive of the country has played a key role in the successes that this government has achieved in the security domain. There was an immediate outreach by Mr. President on assuming office, reaching out to the immediate neighbors. We faced an existential threat at the time with Boko Haram, as you know. And so the immediate objective was to get the support of the neighboring countries, which was achieved, reaching out to the Cameroon, to Chad, to Benin, and to Niger. And this outreach to them, strengthening the joint multinational joint task force, really transformed the security challenges that we faced. I call it an existential challenge from Boko Haram at the time. And this required a very deft foreign policy approach, and a very successful one, and it enabled us to unite with our neighboring countries and isolate and surround the insurgents. So that made a very important difference. Then the second big difference was in relation to countries farther afield, some of the major Western countries. And there again, the foreign policy angle was key. Mr. President reached out to the United States and the Western European countries. And we had a situation where essentially there was an arms embargo against the country. There was no sharing of military intelligence, and this was reversed. We then had those countries, very important countries, coming on board, providing us with military intelligence and also military hardware. And again, this helped in transforming the situation as far as security is concerned.
Okay. Now, shortly after this, you have been to several countries. In short, some persons, the critics of government called it, you guys went on a globe trot with Mr. President, but a lot of us who saw it from the point of diplomacy saw it as diplomatic shuttles across the world. Several bilateral agreements have been signed, several MOUs have been signed. Key among them, if I can remember clearly, when you went with Mr. President to Syria, support Syria. A lot of questions were asked, why Nigeria's voice in Syria? You have been to several other countries, and the big one was China. So looking at all what you have endorsed with countries, how far, how well are we with it?
Yeah, I think it's important to stress that those visits were not junkets. They were not arbitrary. They were strategic. And you have to contextualize them, in the framework of our immediate needs and priorities at the time. You've pointed out the three priorities of the day: security, the economy, and anti-corruption. And you'll see that, if you look at where Nigeria was at the time, the country was really did not have much credibility. We know that for a fact. That a lot of countries were major countries, were shunning Nigeria and not trading with Nigeria. So we really had to address the image issue of the country and the credibility issue of the country. And so a lot of these visits were targeted for that. The visits helped in the security arena, as I pointed out to you, because a lot of the countries now came on board to help Nigeria in the fight against insurgency, and that was really crucial and made all the difference. And if we look at anti-corruption, Mr. President was able to now put the issue of corruption at the top of the international agenda. And we saw this culminated in a summit on anti-corruption. We needed, as a government, to get the buy-in of a lot of these countries where the stolen loot of the country are stashed, and getting the buy-in of the leaders of those countries to help, in recovering those the loot and in preventing the siphoning of Nigerian resources to those countries. And a lot of progress has been made in that area, because a lot of those countries, leaders of those countries, are now committed and engaging with us in recovery and prevention of of the looting of the Nigerian treasury. And just as importantly, in the area of economics, the economy, the sudden crash in oil prices created a real problem for this country. And it was clear that the government needed to diversify and not rely on a single commodity. But for that, you needed to attract foreign direct investment. But foreign direct investment is all about confidence, in a country. And so it was important to reach out and for, Mr. President to get to know these leaders, to reassure them and give their business community that confidence that investing in Nigeria, would not be such a risk, and improving the business climate. And also, we, in fact, I think statistically, it was reckoned that the losses suffered through the Boko Haram crisis is the highest in the world in terms of, casualties of terrorism. So we also needed to show solidarity with other countries, making common cause with other countries that are faced with terrorist challenges. So going to London for the summit that was organized to address the Syrian situation was also another way, of showing that we wanted to show solidarity and also engage with countries, as we believe that terrorism is a global phenomenon and that we all have to work together for it. So those visits were really in that context.
We know anytime soon the new team of ambassadors, the process is on, and I know in a couple of weeks, maybe by the time this program is running, they would have been cleared and what have you. But the other surprise to Nigerians, the reason you gave reasons for it, was this scaling down of missions across the world, with the robust engagements Nigeria made with other countries, and a sudden reversal of scaling down missions across the world. What informed this? Will it not affect all that?
Well, economics actually informed it, and I wouldn't say it was scaling down. I think it's more rationalization, of our missions. The number of missions we're closing down, minuscule, very small, not more than maybe 4 or 5, and some of them, in any case, are small multilateral initiatives like the D8, which are not really as robust and we're not engaging really with that. Almost moribund will be the word.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're not really active.
They're not really active. Yeah,
okay.
Some of those
now,
missions.
before we go on, let me just take this. What's your ministry's position regarding foreign envoys in Nigeria with compliance with diplomatic protocol? Are you satisfied so far? Are you really monitoring them?
Yeah, we do. I think by and large they observe the the procedures and rules and regulations.
Okay. Now let's veer to. You just came back from Kigali, from the AU summit, and so many things took place that a lot of Nigeria picked interest in. Can you give us an overview of the importance of the 27th African Union Summit you just came back from?
Well, the importance, I would say, is probably in the initiatives that were taken. For instance, an AU passport was launched. That was a major event. And I think that showed really the commitment of the heads of state to still drive the whole Africa integration process. Yeah. Then also the financing of the organization. There was a major step taken there, and that was really because a lot of the budget of the organization is funded by partners outside Africa. So clearly it's not sustainable for the African Union to be funded by outside partners. And so a decision was taken on the financing of the African Union, and that decision was that 0.2% of approved imports of each country would be used as a contribution of the various countries to the African Union. And it's believed that that will really solve the economic crisis of the Union.
Okay.
And I think another important area is a free trade area, African free trade area, which is supposed to materialize next year.
The program, once again, is Diplomatic Ties, and my guest is the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Geoffrey Onyama. We're taking a look at Nigeria's foreign policy and sundry matters. Stay on for the program as we discuss more on it. Before we went on break, we just went within the periphery of AU free trade. What is it all about?
Well, it's a free trade, duty-free, a tariff-free area for, in Africa.
How helpful will that be regarding, we already have free trade zones in Nigeria at the federal level and some states initiated it. Would that be mainstreamed properly if it works?
No, if it works, it will certainly be to the advantage. I mean, it's a larger market, for countries and greater opportunities, and you're not restricted within your borders as, entrepreneurs and business people.
Okay. Now, the AU passport program, when a lot of Africans said it, let's say Nigerians, well, how will it work? How feasible will it be?
Yeah.
Do you think it will work? There are doubts everywhere that it may not work.
Well, I mean, there's good reason for there to be doubt. The idea is to have free trade, free movement of peoples across the continent. Well, the African passport in and of itself does not achieve that. What is required is a treaty that is signed up to by all the African countries, recognizing the right of Africans to move freely without visas. So we haven't reached that stage yet, and it will probably take some time. But the passport itself is probably, to a certain extent, symbolic in nature, showing this commitment to a united Africa, a united peoples of Africa. And it may well be the case that a number of countries will have legislation recognizing the African Union passport and recognizing the right of a bearer of the African Union passport to have visa-free entry into particular countries.
I hope there are plans for advocacy, because we need to be aware
of
all through this process.
Yeah, well, that's really, well, in fact, the African Union wants to decentralize the process of the issuing of these passports, because as of now, it's the African Union itself that issues the passport. But what they want to do is to, establish a template, and each country, as is done with ECOWAS, to issue at the national level. So I guess the advocacy aspect would also have to be done by the countries at the national level in cooperation with the African Union.
Okay, the politics of it.
Yeah.
What happened that we didn't have the election of the AU chairman? We had fusings here and there. Can you educate us?
Well, no, to be elected.
Yeah, there was supposed to be an election at the end of the summit.
There was an election.
What was it? Was it concluded or inconclusive? Was there really one?
Well, yeah, there was really one. Yes. They were voting for the position of chairperson of the African Union.
Exactly, that's the concern. That's what says the politics of it.
Yeah, so there was voting for that. But there were 3 candidates. And to be elected, you needed 2/3 of the vote of the 54 member states. And none of the candidates was able to get that.
Now, that's the concern. Was Nigeria among the candidates?
No, Nigeria.
And the question most Nigerians ask, why was Nigeria not presented for the office? Given our position, funding, human resources, and what have you in AU, why was Nigeria not fronted for the position?
Well, there's an unwritten rule, actually, from the days of the Organization of African Unity, that the big powers in Africa would not occupy the position of chairperson of the African Union. It's a bit the same with the United Nations. The big 5 countries of the UN, they never present a candidate for the post of Secretary General of the UN. So you have the same kind of understanding with the AU. Some people would say that South Africa, in running, presenting a candidate that won the last time, Mrs. Zuma, was in breach of that gentleman's agreement, But there is that agreement. So Nigeria, the position of chairperson is not one that Nigeria would necessarily feel obliged to contest, to show that we contribute so much to the AU. There are positions of commissioners that are possibly just as important.
Because just like you've cleared it, a lot of persons never knew this. They were bothered, why? And I said, if you're on this program, now you have educated Nigerians to know why a Nigerian was not taking part in that election. Okay. So by and large, when are we hoping that to be concluded? Was it concluded?
No. So it was reopened, so for new candidates, and the elections will now take place next January.
Okay, so is Nigeria backing any candidate, or you don't need to say it here?
Well, no. We are going to review the situation and decide whether to run for the position of chairperson or whether to run for one of the commissioner positions. Like there's a Peace and Security Commission, Political Affairs Commission, and so on and so forth.
But from your explanation, we don't need to run for the one of a chairperson, right?
It does not have to be it's not a priority, put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The other side of it too, Morocco at Kigali indicated to come back to AU 32 years after they left AU. Of what impact will it be to Nigeria or to the African Union?
Well, to the African Union, it will mean essentially the whole continent coming back together as one. One member state pulled out, And if Morocco comes back, then it's almost like a family that I don't know if you want to use the example of a prodigal son or whatever, but at least a member of the family coming back into the fold.
So how was it received? Nigeria, first, let me take off from you. How did Nigeria see this action by Morocco and by the larger picture, Africa?
Well, there hasn't been a formal move yet on the side of Morocco. So the African Union, as an organization, as far as we know, has not received a formal request from Morocco. We have probably, just like you, been hearing that these moves are afoot.
Okay. Quickly now, let me take you to Brexit. After Cameroon, Theresa May said, Brexit or no Brexit, Brexit is Brexit, they will move on. And Cameroon, in endorsing Theresa, said he knows she's a lady that will take Britain to where Britain should be. You have made a lot of comments shortly after the exercise, and it is very clear that a lot of Britons maybe are regretting, or they didn't really understand the politics of it. So looking at it from the diplomatic perspective, what are your thoughts on this so far?
Well, as I always say, it's really something for the British to be preoccupied about. From the Nigerian perspective, what will change, what may have to change, is that we may have to have bilateral trade agreements with Britain, with the United Kingdom, because a lot of the trade agreements we had, or we have with them in the framework of the European Union, So clearly there will probably have to be renegotiations of those, trade agreements with Britain. But otherwise, I would not believe that it will make there'll be such a big difference to our relations with Britain at the moment. And don't forget, it'll probably take another 2 years for Brexit to actually take effect, But for now, I think that we will just have to look at those areas where we'll now have to have bilateral agreements with the British.
Well, thank you, Honourable Minister.
Thank you.
It was good having you on part one of this discourse, and we believe in part two of this discourse we'll go on to other areas.
Okay.
That is about that on part one of the discussion with the Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Geoffrey Onyama. Thanks for being there, and on behalf of all of us,